Hello, I'm Richard. Today I'm going to check on a brief history of a computer and computer generation. Welcome. Last video or last tutorial, I checked on the definition of term. So today we are going to check on the computer generation, beginning with the first generation, second generation, till today. So let's check of history of a computer. That is generation of a computer. So the view of computers into generation is based on the fundamental technology employed. Each new generation is characterized by greater speed, large memory capacity, and smaller overall size than the previous one. So as we are going to check on the computer generation, so you'll notice that from the first generation to the second generation, each is characterized by greater speed. So as we check on the second generation, you'll notice that it is of higher speed, or it had higher speed compared to the first generation. They had larger memory compared to the first generation. So till today, you notice that there have been improvement each and every year, each and every day, each and every hour. So on the first generation, computers were generated between 1946 and 1957. Between 1946 and 1957, this is where the invention of computers began. So they used vacuum tubes to construct computers. So between these years, they used vacuum tubes, not like today. So we'll check today and see what they used to make computers. So these computers were large in size, and writing programs in them was difficult. So at the beginning, you notice that the beginning of everything is very difficult. It's not that much advanced, so they were very large in size, and writing programs in them was difficult. So we'll check on the first, that's the first generation. So I think we have some features of the first generation, or before we check on the features, we'll check on the disadvantages or the drawback. What were the main disadvantages they encountered during the use of those computers? So you notice that the operating speed was quite slow. So as they used the computers, not like today whereby you press and press and you just search everything, or you just do some quite tasks on the computers with a very high speed. No, during those first generation, the operating speed was quite slow. So if we asked to give some disadvantages of the first generation, so you can state that the operating speed was quite slow. Power consumption was very high, so they consumed a lot of fire. So you notice that to people nowadays, to those days, people using computers was quite difficult. So they were used in the offices for higher consumption, or in the bigger institution, because of the higher consumption of power. It required large space for installation. So to install the softwares in those computers, they needed very large memory for the installation. Also, they needed large space. The programming capability was quite low, so there were no capability like today whereby you find everything is in programming manner. You find as we are, as I'm doing today, is it's a result of programming. Maybe it was a C plus or a C plus plus plus, those all. So you notice that during those first generation, the programming capability was quite low, so they were cumbersome to operate. So that is meaning to put data, or to operate in data input, or to do the operation like the data output, that is processing of instruction, was quite cumbersome. So let's check on uh, I think we have checked on the disadvantages. So I'll check on the period of the second generation, that was between 1959 and to 1965. So they didn't use the vacuum tubes as the first generation. The second generation, they used transistors based, the use of transistors. So what are the main features of the second generation? So you see that the second generation used of transistors than that were cheaper, are reliable in comparison to first generation. So these are like the advantages of using the computers in the second generation compared to the first generation. So they were reliable in comparison to first generation that used vacuum tubes. They were smaller in size, they generated less heat. So you notice that the disadvantages of the first generation are the advantages in the second generation as you overturn them. Let me call it that way. So those were the main features. So let's check maybe disadvantages or the features or the some of the computers, example of computers which were used during that second generation. So these are some more features. They consumed less electricity, not as compared to today, but compared to the first generation computers. So they were faster than first generation computers, still very costly, AC required, supported machine and assembly languages. So let's go to the next step. We'll check on the examples of computers that were used in second generation. These include the IBM 1620, IBM 1794, CDC, UNIVAC, and many more. So those were just examples used in the second generation. So I'm going to check on the period of that generation. So you notice that during the period of that generation, the computers became more advanced. As you can see on my screen, the computers were a bit large, but you notice that they were attached the part, the keyboard, the CPU, that is the central processing unit, and the monitor. You notice that they were very a bit so smaller in size, but you notice that it's not like today. So it was between 1965 to 1971. So we saw that on the first generation they used vacuum tubes, second generation used transistors, but this one used ICB, that is integrated circuit based. So you may be asked to give the differences, one difference between first, second, and that. So you notice that is vacuum tube transistors are integrated circuit based. So the IC, that is the integrated circuit, was invented by Jack Kilby. This development made computers smaller in size, and you can see reliable and efficient. So they were smaller in size, reliable, and efficient. So let's check on the main features of that generation. So the ICUs, that is integrated circuit, more reliable in comparison to previous two generations. They were smaller in size, generated less heat, were faster, less maintenance, costly is required, consumed less electricity, and supported high-level programming languages. So you notice that as we are checking on the first generation second, that they are becoming more advanced and advanced now and then. So what are some examples of computer used during this third generation? Should note that IBM 360, Honeywell PDP, that's personal data processor, IBM 370, TDC 316. So those were the main features. Let's check on the fourth generation. You can see on the improvement, you can see now the monitor and the CPU and the keyboard are quite more advanced. They were smaller in size even. So it was between 1971 and 1980. So this used the, so you saw that they used the integrated circuit. What about the fourth generation? Computers of fourth generation used very large scale integrated circuit, not just integrated circuit, but very large scale integrated circuit. So fourth generation computers became more powerful, compatible, reliable, and affordable. So this now during the fourth generation. So you said that they become more reliable. So features of fourth generation are VLSI, very large integrated circuit, that is technology used. They were very cheap, portable, reliable. Use of PCs, very small size, pipeline processing, no AC required. Concept of internet was introduced. Great development in the field of networks. Computer became easily available. So they were easily available. Let's check on the examples that of computer used. These are some of the examples that were used during the fourth generation. So let's check today the period of fifth generation, that is between 1980 till to date. So this generation is based on parallel processing, hardware and artificial intelligence. So software. Artificial intelligence is an emerging branch in computer science which interprets the means and method of making computers think like human beings. So you'll notice that between 1980 till to date, the generation based on parallel processing hardware and artificial intelligence. So they define what is artificial intelligence, the AI, the artificial intelligence. So the computer is the manner in which computers are behaving nowadays. You'll notice that they are doing the same things as a human being can do. The difference that you are inputting data, they are getting processed, they are getting produced, processed, and they produce as information that's becoming meaningful to the users. So they are becoming computer science. They interpret the means and method of making computers things like human being. That is the AI, the artificial intelligence. So what are the main features? Or let's check some examples of the AI, that is artificial intelligence. You have like things like robots. So you notice that the technology is becoming more and more. So the robots are being used in the companies, they're being used in the bigger institution, the big organization, though they are being used there. You have neural networks, we have game playing, development of expert systems to make decisions in real life situation. We have natural languages, understanding and generation. So that's all examples of the artificial intelligence. So let's check on the features of the fifth generation. That is now today, that is ultra large SI technology, that is artificial integrated circuit, development of true artificial intelligence through AI, development of natural language processing. So you notice that there are several languages processing that were used today, the processing languages, high-level programming languages, and many more. As we continue, we'll check them as we go to the module 2 and module 3. So this is just module 1. We are going to look at the just definition of terms. We check the application and many more. So we have advancement in parallel processing, advancement in superconductor technology, more user-friendly interfaces with multimedia features, availability of heavily powerful and compact computers at cheaper rates. So those were the features of the fifth generation. So the examples of computers used, there are desktop, we have laptop, we have notebook, ultrabook, we have tablets, and those all we are using today are examples of the fifth generation. So thank you for watching. Thanks very much for watching. As you like the video, please share to your friend and remember to subscribe. Thank you.